progression of events. All evolution follows a perfect sequence of rise and fall, a rhythmic motion of construction and destruction. Night follows day and day follows night. The seasons appear and disappear in regular succession, year after year. Birth, childhood, youth, old age, and death makes a clear progressive chain. Cause and effect project themselves endlessly. The law of causation works with mathematical precision. Yet, people hold fanatical beliefs that there is no life after death or that there is. Such irrational beliefs lead you nowhere. The subject of birth and death is deep, unfathomable. You cannot dismiss it thus by such speculative notions. You must study the subject carefully. Death and birth are merely a change of state, a movement from one experience to another. There is nothing terrible, abominable about death as people view it. Birth and death are two sides of a coin. There can be no birth without death and no death without birth. Morning dies, evening is born. Evening dies, night is born. Night dies, morning is born. This chain of birth and death goes on perennially. So does the chain of birth, growth, decay, and death continue. The phenomena of birth and death brings about change. The world is in a continuous flux of change. Creation and destruction are the warp and the woof of the world. The play of these two powers maintain the mineral, vegetable, animal, and human kingdom. Creation, destruction, and maintenance are three facets of the same phenomena. They are not separate from one another. In the chain of creation and destruction of the different facets in a day, the day is maintained. Likewise, in the appearance and disappearance of the seasons, the year is maintained. In the progressive ages of life, the individual is maintained. The entire universe, therefore, is an expression of the three powers of creation, destruction, and maintenance. The devotional people find it difficult to conceptualize the precise manifestation of nature. So, the scriptures has personified these powers as gods. Brahma as the god of creation, Shiva as the god of destruction, Vishnu, god of maintenance. Also indicated to the intellectuals that there are one by combining the three gods in the form of Dattatreya. Some believe that when a person dies, nothing remains, that death is the end of the personality, and that there is no trace of him thereafter. Others disagree with this view. They do not consider death as finality. They believe in the continuity of life, and that the present incarnation is only a link in the chain of his entire life. Yet others posit the existence of imaginary realms of heaven and hell, where they believe humans go to after death. These beliefs are not based on rational analysis and derivation. Instead, you must collect relevant data, study them carefully, and draw intelligent conclusions from them. Only then would you get a clearer idea of the phenomena of birth and death. There is another strange phenomena concerning death. Though death is inevitable and everyone knows that all living beings are certain to die, none believe it in practice. Young or old, healthy or unhealthy, even the terminally ill feel that death is far away. It is a wonder that nobody practically believes in death. Even at a ripe old age, people keep amassing wealth, enlarging their worldly relations, behaving as though death would never take hold of them. Intellectually, they may concede, but from a practical point of view, they ignore their imminent end. It seems paradoxical. On the one hand, a person is so certain of his end. The very thought of death sends a quiver through his entire frame. His body turns cold at the mere mention of death, while on the other hand, it does not seem to bother him at all. He writes poetry, flourishes his art portraying death. What could be the reason for this paradox? How is it that the looming danger of death does not actually disturb his life? Everyone expects to live on and on without being concerned about the end. The reason for this innate assurance of longevity is immortal nature of self within. Every human being is quintessentially the self. That being so, its immortal nature colors his material layers, which makes his individuality assume a sense of immortality and keeps him free from the thought of death.
In the continuation of the causation, we are discussing this topic, birth and death. Birth, appearance, death, disappearance. So, birth and death is appearance and disappearance. One of the important questions that this law of causation, law of karma, talking about is there a continuity to life? That is the question. Is it a continuous factor or it ends? It appears at birth all of a sudden and it comes to an end on death. So is it a sudden appearance and a sudden disappearance, or is it a continuity? This is the question. In this part of the world, the eastern part of the world, where this philosophy has been there for so long, including Jainism, Buddhism, etc., all religions that came out of the Oriental, it came from the East. All of them by default accept there is this thing called reincarnation, birth and death. From the Greek side of the philosophy, the continuity of life is not explored deeply. It's very, their philosophy is restricted to ethics and morals. Mostly it will be revolving around ethics and morals. Here, the question that Vedanta is discussing is, what is the phenomena of birth and what is the phenomena of death? In Kathopanishad, you find a 9-year-old boy asking this question. You read the Kathopanishad, Nachiketas is a 9-year-old boy there. He's called the Upanishad introduces Nachiketas as a Kumara. Kumara means 8-year-old or 9-year-old, according to the, like, you can't say 40-year-old teenager, no? You can't say that, isn't it? Similarly, you can't have a 40-year-old Kumara. Kumara means a 8-year-old, 9-year-old. So generally we take Nachiketas to be a 9-year-old boy. And a 9-year-old boy is asking this question about this birth and death. Remember the introduction. When we did the introduction itself, we have discussed that it is based on inference. We have already seen that. The law of karma, the birth and death, the next topic, which is a natural corollary of birth and death, the reincarnation, all comes under the law of inference. We have seen that already. How the law of karma itself is an inferential law, not a perceptible law. It is inferential law. Now, what are the factors that you take into consideration to infer? What data do you take into consideration, and then you infer a logical conclusion out of it? That is the topic, birth and death. Why talk about birth and death first? The context of we have seen the supreme law. We have seen the law of destiny, continuity of the law of destiny. We saw the law of karma, the prarabdha, purushartha, etc. All that we have seen. And then we are moving on to the topic called birth and death. How does this birth and death fit into the supreme law, the law of cause and effect? What is the relevance of talking about birth and death in the context of the law of cause and effect? The relevance is a appearance or a disappearance has a continuity. It's not a sudden appearance and it is not a sudden disappearance. It's not a sudden appearance. It's not a sudden disappearance. When we say the child is born, the child is a very unique combination. All human child are that unique combination. There is something very fresh and very young in the child, and there is something that is very old in that child. There is something in the child that is fresh, that is young, and there is something in the child that is very old. What is it that is old in the child, and what is it that is young and fresh in the child? The body is fresh, the senses are fresh. The person that has come and occupied the body is not, the person who's coming and occupying the body is not young, very old person. In fact, that's where some of the children, all children are very old, because the jiva has been traveling for very long, isn't it? The jiva has been traveling for very long. That's what we are going to see. So they see an appearance and then they see a disappearance, and they connect these two, the birth and death. So appearance and disappearance. And when you talk about appearance and disappearance, we have to understand it in the cause and effect phenomenon. Therefore, it is discussed under the topic law of causation, because it has to fit under the same law, the supreme law of cause and effect. What is the question? The question is, you see an appearance. What is it? What was there before that appearance? And then you see a disappearance. What happens after the disappearance? The child has come. What was there before that? When we are so interested in asking what happens after death, with the same inquiry spirit, we should also inquire what happens before birth. If you don't inquire what is happening before birth, you can never understand what is happening after death. And most of the time people want to inquire after death. What happens after death? What happens before birth? There is no inquiry. It means the very data, the very observation, the very data itself is very limited. So here we discuss the birth as well as the death. Now what is happening between birth and death we are not discussing. What is happening between birth and death is perceptible. That is maintenance part. Between the birth and between the death, there is the maintenance part, and that maintenance part is perceptible. So we are not discussing that part. So here we are discussing the phenomena of birth and the phenomena of death. Instead of calling it as two different phenomena, we say it is two sides to the same coin. And whenever we say coin, what you should understand, one side is seen, the other side is inferred. You can never two sides to the coin at the same time. You can always see only one side in a coin. Seeing the one side, you infer the other side. What is this experience of birth and what is this experience of death? We are not talking about death experience. Vedanta doesn't talk about that. That is weird because nobody knows what it is. Or if anybody knows what it is, they will not be in a position to tell us also. If they are telling us this is that experience, it means they didn't have that experience. This is an experience that we know that we all are going to go through, but we can never do it. So the most beautiful aspect of your life, which is the birth, you don't remember. You have no way of remembering that. Because what is the starting part of your life? Your birth, isn't it? That is known, that is not known at all. And we all know that it is going to end. That experience also is not known. So birth, others tell you that you are born on so and so date, isn't it? Correct? Others tell you that you are born on so and so date and they give a certificate also. And in Vedanta, we say that certificate doesn't mean anything because you do not know it. You only know that you have come into existence. But that phenomena of birth, the most beautiful phenomena of life, which is the birth, is not known. The death, again, another experience is not known. Between these two unknown, something is known in between. In law of karma, that which is known in between, what to do, how to do, that's not the subject matter here. For all that has been discussed already in karma yoga, dharma, etc. All that has been, the maintenance part of life has been discussed that is the very easiest part of life. What is the easiest part of life? To discuss the maintenance part of life. Maintenance part of life means what you should do, how you should do, you have the freedom. Even when we say you have the freedom, and that freedom also has to be, we said you have freedom, and then we say that freedom needs to be guided. All that we have seen. I'm not going into that discussion into details a lot. Freedom without guidance has no meaning. In fact, that freedom is detrimental. In fact, that freedom without guidance is so detrimental. And that guiding factor is what we call as dharma. And that's how you do your life. You live your life. You use your purushartha. All that we have, you use your purushartha rightly. Prarabdha is what you have brought in. All that we have seen. Now we are discussing something deeper than that. From the maintenance part of life, we are discussing the creation and destruction, the appearance and disappearance. The question is, what caused the appearance? Father and mother, sir. Where is the problem? Isn't it? Father and mother, isn't it? Father and mother kept the car ready. Somebody came and occupied that. No, they didn't create the one who occupied the body. The father and mother are not the creator of the occupant of the body. The father and mother create the body. Somebody comes and occupies. So we are not talking about the creation of the body here. We are talking about the one who is coming and the one who come and occupies the body and the one that leaves the body. So we are talking about the continuity of life as in the one who comes and occupies the body. Vasamsa jirnani yata vihaya navani grannati naroparani. As he said in the Gita, he comes, stays in it for a while and leaves seeking another body. What makes the person to occupy one and what makes the person to leave is governed by the same law of cause and effect. That is birth and death. So, again I repeat, that which decides the person occupying the body and that which makes a person leave the body is governed by the same law. So, by the same law, Ramatirtha extends it. He says, the children are parent, he says. The parent say that my children. No. According to Vedanta, it is wrong because it is the child that is choosing the parent. Meaning, they create the body. The one who is occupying the body is not created by the parent. If the one who is occupying the body is also created by the parent, then there is no continuity. Then there is no continuity at all. It means it happened then, and then at one point of time, definitely there is going to be a death, and death is the end. If before birth there is zero, and after death also it's going to be zero, in between also it is. What is in between? Meaningless. Are you able to follow? If death is going to put a full stop to everything, and all religions believes in continuity. Yeah? Here we say cyclical continuity. The West, they say you will be in eternal hell or you will be in eternal heaven. But definitely something is continuing after the body. Are you able to follow? If everything is going to end at the level, death of the body is death of the jiva. If death of the body is death of the individual, then what is the right way of living then? What is the right way of living then? If life doesn't have any continuity, what is the right way of living? Indulge. You can do whatever you want. You can do anything. There is no difference between a life of a sinner and the life of a saint, because after death it is only the bone that is remaining. From the bone you can never make out whether the person is it's a divine person's bone or the terrorist bone. Can you make out from the bone? You cannot. So we understand the phenomena of birth and death. We understand the phenomena of birth and death as a continuity. So Vedanta establishes life has a continuity. If life has continuity is established, Then dharma becomes meaningful. Then proper use of purushartha becomes meaningful. Are you able to see the connection now? If only when continuity of life is established, what becomes meaningful? The proper use of purushartha becomes meaningful. If there is no continuity, it doesn't really matter what you do or what you don't do. Discipline has no meaning at all, isn't it? In fact, intelligence is to be indisciplined and indulgent. Because what is the point of wasting your time with all the tapas and sacrifice and giving and everything where there is not going to be a continuity? So, to make proper use of purushartha, what is important to understand is there is a continuity. That continuity is the cycle of birth and death. So, Nachiketas went and asked Yama this question. Does life have a continuity or not? If it is continuing, then the understanding of life is different. If there is no continuity, the understanding of life is very different. Some believe that when a person dies, nothing remains. Some believe that there is a continuity. It is not a matter of belief, it should be a matter of understanding. Because here we understand that there is anybody in this eastern part of the world, you come and ask, they talk about reincarnation. Ama sir, yes, the next janma. And they think next janma means going to the next house. They don't know really what is next janma means because they have not bothered to investigate deeply into this question. And why do you have to investigate into this question of birth and death? Investigating into this question of birth and death brings about the necessity, explains the understanding of detachment. Otherwise, you can never understand detachment. You can never understand the value of detachment. How is that connected? Because you understand how many times you have done this in the past and how many times you are going to do the same thing in the future. How many times you are going to do that? So, understanding birth and death is very important in developing a matured understanding about life. And talking about death, most of them do not want to talk about death at all because they see death means that is something that should not be spoken about, because death is the negative thing about life. And what is the positive thing about life? I don't know, whatever is the positive thing. So they said, do not talk about death. In Vedanta, lot of inquiry is done about death. In fact, to a large extent, you can say Bhagavad Gita itself is a explanation on Kathopanishad because so many verses from Kathopanishad is taken. Just as in Brahma Sutras, Chandogya Upanishad is taken a lot. In Bhagavad Gita, Kathopanishad is taken a lot. About 6-7 places, he quotes certain mantras directly. In another few places, there is an indirect reference to the text. What is the text? Kathopanishad. And what is Kathopanishad inquiring? Yama, symbolically, Nachiketas is talking with Yama. And who is Yama? Nobody wants to talk about Yama. Who is Yama? Yama means the Lord of Death. Yama means time. Yama means Kala. Kala means time. One who is the master of time. That's what Yama is. One who is the master of time. Master means one who is not a victim of time. Meaning one who has transcended the time. Master means one who has transcended. So Yama is the person who has transcended time, and Nachiketas goes and asks him this question. What is the question? Does life have continuity? And when Nachiketas asked this third boon, which is the proper Upanishad, starts, Yama doesn't want to answer him at all. Yama tells him he is giving him lot of equivalent boons. I'm not going to the Kathopanishad story. You all know the Kathopanishad story, isn't it? Yes, sir. The stories is better than the philosophy. So keep to the stories. Yeah. Even this afternoon they were telling me. The stories are so good, sir. From where you are getting all these stories? Said some are self-created, some are there, some is a mixture of everything. Yeah. Where do you get now? Where to say? Kathopanishad, you know that story. 3 bones. Everybody's afraid of meeting Yama. Will anybody have the courage to meet Yama? I don't think so. At least I don't have the courage. Because meeting Yama means what? Not for Wednesday class, evening meeting. No. Meeting Yama means, Shankar, meeting Yama na enna artham? Meeting Yama means accompanying Yama. Meeting Yama means going with Yama. Because Yama will not come and say hi and leave you. If Yama meets you, you have to accompany him. So meeting Yama is accompanying Yama. Where everybody's afraid of meeting Yama, this boy, 9-year-old boy, waited for 3 days to meet Yama. Because when he went, Yama wasn't there. When he went, Yama wasn't there. We are so afraid of turning old only in the first place. Where do we have the courage to meet Yama? Isn't it? We are so afraid of, isn't it? Since you waited for 3 days, I'll give you 3 boons. First 2 boons, and all the story gets over in the first 15 mantras, it gets over. And then Yama asks, what is the third boon? In fact, before he goes to the third boon, Yama grants him the 4th boon. The 4th boon is the way he was receptive. They talk about how a student, we don't do all that. We don't get into those texts. There they talk about how a student is receptive and confirming to the teacher what he is learning. And Nachiketas did it so beautifully. Yama says, I have never seen a student like you. Therefore, I'll give you the 4th boon. And he gives him the necklace that he is wearing. Because his receptivity was so extraordinary. All that is done. Now comes the third boon. What is the third boon? He says, is there, does life has a continuity? Yama says, ask me some other boon. Don't ask me this. Ask for something equivalent. Isn't it? If you don't have this, you ask for Okay. Option B. Option A wasn't there. So ask for option. Ask for option B. Ask for that. And what is the equivalent boon? If Yama gives me that equivalent boons, I'll take that. What a boon he gives. For all that Yama goes on giving, Nachiketas keeps on saying no, no, no. He showed his Viveka, he showed his Vairakya, he showed his Mukshatva. Then this answer came. And these two portions, birth and death and theory of reincarnation, the two topics, is conceptually Kathopanishad put in a very prose form. Why I'm giving all these stories? Because these two topics has borrowed a lot from that Upanishad called Kathopanishad in the prose form. That's all. So what is the first thing here? The first thing here is, does life have continuity? What is life having continuity means? What is life having continuity means? Doing the same thing again and again and again without achieving anything. That is the continuity. When he says, does life have a continuity? He's not asking about what happens after death. The junior student, elementary Vedantic student knows the answer to that question. What happens after death? Junior student will know the answer, isn't it? அதுக்கு 3-year course எல்லாம் வேணும். 3-year course கூட வேணும். Even the 3-year course of Vedanta Academy is also not required. 6 months of weekly classes is enough to give an answer. What happens after death? You take up another body and go. And you don't need Yama to give an answer. And you don't have to test the boy so much for answering this. Then what is the test for? He says, even gods cannot understand this. What you are asking, Nachiketas, even gods don't understand. Meaning, it is too difficult to comprehend. What is the difficulty of comprehending it? What is the difficulty of comprehending? The difficulty of comprehending is you go through the chain, you go through the cycle again and again and again, keep forgetting it and go through it again. You go through the cycle again and again and again, and you keep forgetting that you are going through it again and again and again. A person who is able to remember this, remember means, please understand, not remembering. A person who is able to understand this. Remembrance not in terms of how many births I have had, how much more I am, not chronological numbers. So, a person who can understand this. What is understanding? Going through the cycle again and again and again, forgetting it and starting all over again. You go through one cycle, forget everything and start all over again. You go through the cycle, forget everything and start all over again. What doesn't go waste in this each and every cycle? That you should know the answer by now. What is happening every time you go through a cycle like this? What happens? What you are doing in each and every cycle? You accumulate a karma. To exhaust that karma, you get into an embodiment. As you are exhausting that karma, you pick up. You pick up another karma. As you are repaying one loan, you create another loan and then get into another embodiment, repay that. As you are repaying that, what are you doing? creating another. But sir, when I see my family, my wife, my children, but is this rule applicable to grandchildren also, sir? Shankar, correct? Huh? Is this rule applicable to grandchildren also, because they are also so beautiful they are, so wonderful they are? Vijay Rangan, where is the child? Sleeping, ah? Ah, we are sleeping. Oh, you. Even when the child is sleeping, how beautiful it looks, no? Correct? When the child is alive, awake, how beautiful it is. When the child is sleeping, how beautiful it is. In this, uh, caught up in this, how can the person understand the birth and death? Are you able to follow? So, birth and death is about an understanding of going through the cycle again and again and again, accumulating karmas, exhausting them, accumulating more, exhausting them, accumulating more, exhausting them. So, reincarnation, birth and death gives you an understanding. It brings about a matured understanding of life. What is a matured understanding of life? The matured understanding of life is there is a cycle that is going on and on and on, and that cycle has no meaning. There is a cycle. That's why he says it's a perennial thing. This birth and death is perennial, almost infinite it is. We call it as chakra. We call it as chakra, cycle. Chakra means the wheel, the cycle. What is the cycle? The cycle is the body is young and fresh. The person that has occupied the body is not young and fresh. That is very old. Anadi it is. Body is young. The person coming and occupying the body is not young. So, in fact, there is no such thing called young person at all. All are ignorance very, very old, isn't it? I don't know how many PhDs in, because in every Janma we pick up one. So what is the relevant data that you have to collect? He says, collect relevant data, study them carefully, draw intelligent conclusions from them. Only then you would get a clearer idea of the phenomena of birth and death. What is the data? What is the relevant data? The relevant data is what I am trying to elaborate. He's saying find the relevant data. First thing is, what is the first data? There is the child. There is an appearance. And then there is a disappearance. This appearance and disappearance has is it sudden or is it part of something? If we say it is sudden and it's going to end at death, first thing that we should not waste time is, anyway we are going to die, isn't it? Anyway we are going to die. If I am going to die, my child is also going to die. If I am going to die and my child is also going to die, my grandchild is also going to die. No, very negative talk, sir, today. No positive talk at all today. Why? If death is the end of, if death is the end of it, it means dharma has no meaning. Right and wrong, there is no such thing called right and wrong. If death is going to be the end, that is the relevant data. Are you able to follow? If you say, what is the relevant data? If death is going to be the end of it, right and wrong has no meaning. Why right and wrong has no meaning? Because anyway, the sinner is also going to meet the same end. The saint is also going to meet the same end. Might as well what? Might as well indulge and die early. No. Why prolong death by discipline? And what is the point of being disciplined? What is the point of being following the dharma? All that becomes meaningless. Are you able to follow? And then we understand, no, it doesn't seem to be like that. Then another data we collect. What is the other data? If the person occupying is, if the person coming and occupying the body is old, how do I know that it is old? What is the data for me to know that the person occupying is old? How do I know that? Again, on observation only. What you observe? 3 children, same father, same mother, all 3 are different. All 3 are different. Where there are differences, it implies that something is the cause for these differences. If there are differences, you don't say if there are differences. From observation, you have understood there are differences. If there are differences and those differences have a, if there are differences, those differences must have a cause. And what is that cause? Because the child has not started doing any action, no, till. Are you able to follow? The newborn child has not yet started any action for the child's action to cause all this. It means something the child is carrying. So from the angle of the body, you say the child is carrying. From the angle of the jiva, we say the jiva entering the body. So in Vedanta, what do we speak? Do we speak from the angle of the child or do you speak from the angle of jiva? We speak from the angle of the jiva. We don't speak from the angle of the child. When you speak from the angle of jiva, what does it mean? The jiva comes and occupies the body. What decides the occupancy? Is it random? Is it accident? No. It is based on the supreme law of cause and effect. What is the law of karma? We have seen that already. What is the law of karma? You are in a situation because you are supposed to be there. That's why. You are in a situation because, why you are in a situation? Because you are supposed to be there only. You are supposed to be in that situation. Who decides that? What decides that? That we know already. Who decides that? What decides that? The past actions. Therefore, there are differences. Not only there are differences in the situations, differences in, like I give this example. In a hot Sunday afternoon, you are traveling by bus in Madras. Assume that, no? A hot Sunday afternoon, you are traveling by bus. You're so sweating, it's sticky, and you're so irritated, and you are looking out through the window. As you are looking out through the window, a Mercedes Benz is crossing you. And when you're looking at the Mercedes Benz, the thought comes, wow, nice to be in that car, no? At that point of time, to irritate you maximum, the windows of the car comes down. The windows of the car comes down and the head sticks out. Whose head? Ah, correct. Anshu, the dog's head sticks out. You feel the prarabdha of the dog is better than, yeah, the prarabdha of the dog is better than my prarabdha. Isn't it? You feel like better to be a dog in that Mercedes Benz than to be a human being in the bus. Here is a situation for one person, and here is a situation for another entity. The law of karma says it's not. The law of karma says it's not random. The law of karma says it's not by accident. For there is no such thing called accident. There's no such thing called accident. As we quote Einstein most of the time, he says, God doesn't play the dice, he says, no. God doesn't play the dice. When he says God doesn't play the dice means there is no such thing called accident. There's no such thing called luck and all. You are in a situation because you are supposed to be there. By your own actions. Therefore, it is very clear that there is a continuity. And death cannot end it. Death of one body cannot stop the continuity. Therefore, we say, birth, there is nothing abominable about death because it is only like in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, no, from 25, 26, 27, 28, he says, what are you worried, Arjuna? What are you worried that is going to die? Brahman doesn't die. There is no birth, there is no death. So that way, if you see that, you will not be worrying about death. Body anyway is dying. So what is the worry about that which is dying anyway? And the jiva is not going to die because they are going to leave this body and take up another body. So when you are worrying about death, about what are you worrying? So there are three things here. What are the three things here? One is the body. The second is the jiva. The third one is Brahman. And as far as Brahman is concerned, no problem, isn't it? And as far as the jiva is concerned also, he says, who do you think is going to die? They are not going to die. And if you think the end of the body is the end of them, a person like Arjuna also who knows all this, don't understand birth and death. Even a person like Arjuna who has studied, who has gone to the Gurukula, who has got all the basic knowledge of the scriptures, who also knows that there is this thing called birth and death, that person also gets worried. Why? Because there's no proper understanding. There's no proper understanding. That is why death of somebody will not affect you. Death of the one to whom you are attached will affect you. The question is, how does one free from this attachment? How does one become free from this attachment is the question. How does one become free from this attachment? Only when you understand that it is being repeated again and again and again, and repetition has no meaning. Another important data is death Is that what is going to happen? Whether you will become wise or unwise, we do not know upon birth. Whether the child is going to turn into a saint or a sinner, that we do not know upon birth. And only one thing that is very clear upon birth is what? Nothing in life is guaranteed at birth, and only one thing is guaranteed at birth. What is the only thing that is guaranteed at birth? Death, isn't it? You acquire, you live, you grow, only to die. Without a pessimistic, nobody can paint the picture of life more pessimistic than this. Isn't it? Though this is the only thing that is going to happen for sure, and yet nobody believes in it. On the one hand, death brings about fear. On the other hand, intelligently, if you use the intelligence, logic, and reason, you can conclude that you are going to die. But from the practical standpoint, nobody actually, we're not talking about suicidal tendencies. Talking about death is not in the suicidal tendencies thing. Something that is inevitable, and why the mind is not able to accept the inevitable. This is inevitable. Inevitable means it's going to happen. Gatasoon, agatasoon. Gatasoon, agatasoonscha nanushocanti panditaha. All of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2 talks about this only. Why are you worrying? Why are you worrying? Why are you worrying about people dying? Why are you worrying about people dying? So another important thing here is, though it is inevitable, why nobody believes in it? Because there is something in you that doesn't die at all. There is something in you that doesn't die at all. What is the paradox? There is something in you that doesn't die. That's what Yama tells Nachiketas. There is something in you that doesn't die, Nachiketas. So, what is it that doesn't die? There is something in you that doesn't die means there is something in you that is not born also. Are you able to follow now? If there is something in you that doesn't die, it means that something in you is never born also. That which is unborn, that which is not born, and that which doesn't die, you call it as I. That's where Ramana says, ask who am I? There is something in you that is not going to die. If there is something in you that is not going to die, it means that something is not born also. Because only when it is not born, it will not die. If it is born, it will die. What is this birth and death? Nama Rupa. Birth is one Nama Rupa. Death is end of that Nama Rupa. Birth is another Nama Rupa. Death is end of that Nama Rupa. So what is birth and death? Continuous movement of changing names and forms, changing names and forms, changing names and forms. In and through these changing names and forms, there is something that is not changing. There is something that is unchanging. So birth and death gives you two knowledges. What are the two knowledges? It teaches you how to get detached. At the same time, it teaches you about the unchanging also. If you go to Nama Rupa, you analyze that, that will lead to another Nama Rupa. If you analyze that, it will lead to another Nama Rupa. This is the cause and effect. Are you able to follow? So if you go backwards, where will you stop? There's no stop. If there is no end means, there is an end. That is why it is called Veda Antam. Antam means end. Antam means end. The knowledge that brings the cycle to an end. That's why it's called Antam. We keep saying Vedanta, Vedanta. No. Vedanta is a combination of two words, Veda plus Anta. Anta means the end. So that which seems to be a perennial infinite cycle comes to an end. Comes to an end. And if it has to come to an end, if you want it to bring it to an end, you got to follow the prescription. You can't do what you feel like doing and ask the cycle to end. So if you want to bring the cycle to an end, when will you want to bring the cycle to an end? You will want to bring that cycle to an end only when you understand the meaninglessness in it. Only when you understand the futility in it, you will want to bring it to an end. As long as something in it is looking very meaningful, very attractive, why will you want to bring it to an end? Because something is still attractive in that. Something is still very meaningful in that. Something, I still have a hope. This is how you collect the relevant data, study them carefully, and draw intelligent conclusions from them. Then you would get a clearer understanding of the phenomena of birth and death. From another angle, we have seen birth and death means change. In one word, birth and death means change. Is there anything that is changeless is the question. In order to understand the changeless, you have to understand the change. To understand the Satyam, you have to understand the Mithyam. Without understanding Mithya, you cannot understand Satya. Are you able to follow? Similarly, if you to understand the changeless, you have to understand the change first. As long as the mind is attracted to the change, there is no interest in the changeless. Or interest in the changeless is a Mari biscuit discussion. That's all, isn't it? When you don't have anything, when four people get together, they don't have anything to talk. Yeah, what will they talk? Yeah, something they have to talk. IPL portion, IPL pati you can talk. Yeah, some politics you can talk. Some people will talk about. Yeah, it's like two drunken people sitting and talking, where both of them don't know what they are. Okay. That is not the way to approach this birth and death. It's not a Mari biscuit discussion. It's not a tea and biscuit discussion. It is something that has to be carefully. First you need to know what are the relevant data, and then you need to know how to study those data. So birth and death means what is another data? Change. Everything is changing. On the one hand, I am able to infer that everything is changing. On the other hand, also there is a deep conviction about something that is changeless. Why is this paradox? Again, I repeat. On the one hand, you are able to see and infer that everything is changing. In and through this changing, you are also convinced about something that is changeless. What is the reason for this paradox? What is the reason for this paradox? The reason for this paradox in Kathopanishad, in fact, all Upanishads, Vedanta, Bhagavad Gita, all masters say the same thing. There is no paradox. You see one and you don't see the other. There's no paradox here. You see one and you don't see the other. What is it, the one you see? You see the changes and make an effort to keep the changing unchanging. Efforts of the human being is futile. All efforts of the human being is futile. Why all efforts of the human being is futile? Because all efforts are towards to that which is essentially changing. You somehow try to status quo, keep it without changing. Somehow you want to arrest the change. Somehow you think you can, somehow you can make sure that the change will not. Next week, little bit, I'll talk about the boon also. Yeah, I wanted to, because without that, it is incomplete. Next week, I'll be talking about that. When Yama gave so many boons, equivalent boons. Today, I spoke only about the data. Next week, I'll talk about the boons and what is the equivalent data and how Nachiketas negated it. Yama told Nachiketas that I will give you 100 years. But 100 years, last 20 years, if I live in dementia, what is the point of living? Isn't it? If all my body is weak, senses are weak, what is the point of? No. 100 youthful years. 100 youthful years. Nachiketa says, even the longest life is shortest, he says. Muchever you call it as long, it is still short. What I am asking and what you are giving. You are saying equivalent, but you are not giving anything equivalent. Why? Because there is nothing equivalent to this. For to understand the changeless, all the change you put together, if it is given to you, is not equivalent to the changeless. That gives you more understanding about the relevant data. Why so much is not mentioned here? Because if all the relevant data is put here, it has to be a commentary on Kathopanishad. Then the whole book itself will be into 24,000 pages. As it is, 300 pages itself is taking 3 years. I don't know how many years it is taking for us to finish. 34,000 pages. Now, I don't think in our third Janma we will finish the text, I think. But the relevant data we will continue in the next session also, in the context of what equivalent thing that Yama tempt Nachiketas with, and how Nachiketas refutes that. There you get the clue to what the data is. We are studying all that because there you find there is the clue to the data. What is the data? How much ever you prolong it, how much ever you may avoid it, isn't it? I can go on applying cream and try to look like a 20, but still it doesn't. It will not be. Why? So a person can do any amount of thing to prevent the change or conceal the change or cover up the change. On the one hand, the changes are understood. On the other hand, there is the conviction about the changeless. What is that paradox due to? That paradox is due to because since you are quintessentially the self, At the core, you are changeless. Therefore, somehow you want to get back to that changeless state. Because of ignorance, you try to achieve it in the wrong area. Because of ignorance, you are trying to get it in the wrong area, and that will never end. If you search for it in the right area, it comes to an end. If you try to get it in the right area, it comes to an end. This is as far as birth and death is concerned. There are few more about birth and death which we'll discuss in the next class also, and then we'll go to theory of reincarnation. With this, 1 second. Is there anything? Nothing, no? There's a question from previous class. I'm sure. Action done in a timeline, fruit will also exhaust in the same time frame. Request you to please elaborate. See, action done in a timeline, fructification also happens in a timeline. Meaning, okay, take an example of a person has been doing charitable actions. A person has been very uncharitable. Take these two cases. A person is being very charitable. So, action done in a timeline. As you have been doing charitable actions, those actions will fructify and give you a result. And that fructification also will be dependent on the longevity of the fruit. More to explain this, the Shastras use the example of Swarga and Naraka. Even though there is literally no Swarga Naraka, or I don't know whether there is Swarga or Naraka literally or not, I don't know. The Swarga Naraka explains the concept of time frame, exhausting in the time frame. Having done it in a period of time, it will exhaust and you have to experience the benefit of it for that time frame. So if you have done lot of good karma, they say you will be in Swarga Loka for a specific period of time. So they talk about the period in Swarga or the period in Naraka to explain how it exhausts in a time frame. It's not that you have been doing very charitable actions and you enjoy Swarga Loka for 1 day. It's against the law. Or you have been doing very charitable action and you are in Naraka for a long period of time. Or you have been very uncharitable and done one charity. And for that one charity, you win the Dubai lottery. That's not fair, no, isn't it? That's not fair. You win just you open the door for somebody and you win a Dubai lottery for that. It doesn't. You follow, Anshu? So there is a time frame. We may not be able to actually pinpoint it, but we understand that it has to be correspondingly the same. Otherwise, cause and effect has no meaning. So if you see somebody, in spite of all their bad karmas and everything that they are doing now, and the longevity of their good life is so much, what do you understand from that? They are creating the cycle for the next bad one, but today they are experiencing the benefit of something of the past. Are you able to follow? That's why I told you very clearly, never equate. That's why I gave you two words. the present to Bhokta, do not compare it with the present to Karta. Mathematical formula, you put it like it will be easy. The current to Bhokta, the experiencer, is connected to the past Karta. The present experiencer is connected to the past Karta. The current Karta is creating the future Bhokta. You follow? So there is a specific time frame based on, again it is based on sheer observation only. And sorry, observation means inference. What I meant here is inference, because the good deeds that you do must give that result correspondingly. It can't be more, it can't be less. The bad deeds that you do should also fructify in the same timeline. Can't be good, can't be bad. So the current Bhokta, the current experiencer, the enjoyer is connected to the past Karta. But you are not only the enjoyer. As you are enjoying, you are the Karta also. So a human being is a unimaginable combination of Karta and Bhokta at the same time. As he is enjoying, as he is experiencing, he is also, so is a human being an experiencer or doer? Is both. So experiencer in relation to the past Karta, the past doer. Similarly, the present doer will experience, the present doer will experience the consequences of his doing in the future, which is where he will become the future Bhokta. So the past Karta, present Bhokta. Present Karta, future Bhokta. And it has to, and they have to go through it in the, that's the law of karma. It doesn't add anything or it doesn't delete anything. If it can be deleted, then the law is violated. If it can be added, again the law is violated. You follow? Anshu? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Is it okay?
Yes. And so the focus should be on the doer and not the experiencer.
Yes. All this analysis we are doing only to bring the entire focus on the doer, not on the experiencer, because experiencer is the prarabdha. In the context of what we have discussed, who's the experiencer? Experiencer becomes the prarabdha. And prarabdha means you cannot do anything about. So why bother about that which you cannot do anything? And anyway, it is going to exhaust by, itself. So action being done in a time frame, exhaustion also happens in the same time frame. It cannot be more or it cannot be less. That's where we say the law of karma, the law of cause and effect is so impeccable. He says it works with that mathematical precision. Even now he said the law of causation works with mathematical precision. Even in birth and death, we read that. What is the mathematical precision? This is the mathematical precision. It works so perfectly. Is it okay, Anshu?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
With this, we conclude for today, and we continue with birth and death in the next class also.